Hi everyone, welcome back to Farrand and Film. Trying something a little bit different, something that, if it goes well, and we'll see, might become a bit of a weekly thing. And I've seen, because I see a lot of people talk about the US box office and the way that this US box office works. And I mean, you're talking like hundreds of millions of dollars every single weekend going into the cinema in America. But not many people actually look at the UK box office and the UK and the Ireland box office. So I thought what I'd do is start looking at where the top 10 lies, with the films that are in there, how long they've been in there for, how much they're grossing, and then start looking at films that are going to come out, and we can sort of keep track of it. Just something that I thought would be interesting to do. And to be fair, I've had quite a lot of fun going back into the sort of archives and researching, the most highest grossing weekends and all the different things that are going to go into it, and some stuff that I'm going to get to today. So without further ado, let's see what number 10. So number 10 is If, the John Krasinski film. So far, it's grossed just under £12 million. Now, that is very, very close for it making the top 10 of the year, but we're not quite there yet. It's getting close, and it's just about to pip The Fall Guy. So if it sticks around in the top 10 next week, it's probably likely to pip the Fall Guy to become the 10th highest grossing film of the year so far. 7 weeks in the chart this week. Number 9 is the Garfield movie, around about 8.3 million that it's made so far, again in its 6th week at this point, so it's doing fairly well for itself. Number 8, you have Horizon American Saga, which is directed and written and starring Kevin Costner. Now, for a big film, for a new release, this is, I would say, somewhat of a disappointing entry. It was his first week on release last week, but I just think, for whatever reason, it's just not and a UK audience that are going to go and flock to see this. Obviously, fans of Yellowstone are going to go and see this, but knowing that there's another one on the way in August as well, I feel like I'm speaking for quite a number of people here in that we're probably more than likely going to go and check it out on Netflix when both parts are there. So number 8 is Horizon, an American Saga. In at number 7 is Jat and Juliet 3, which is a Punjabi language film. I'm not too sort of au fait with what Jat and Juliet is. It is the 3rd in the series. It's a romantic comedy series, but that's done relatively well with 283,000 in its first week of release. Number 6 is Kinds of Kindness, the Yorgos Lanthimos film starring Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons, amongst other people. Just above 300 grand for that in its first week of release. Again, I think it had a smaller release. It's also an 18 rated film, so it's not getting too much in terms of that bigger box office traction. At number 5, 2nd week of release, is the Bike Riders, so just under 600 grand grossed this weekend, and you're looking around about 2.3 million so far for the Bike Riders. Again, that's dropped from number 2 from last week, so it's still sort of hanging on in there. I think people are sort of going out mainly for the star power for this one, but as we know, there's a bit of a juggernaut in the cinemas at the minute that are probably holding people back from this. In at number 4, 4 weeks in the chart, is Bad Boys Ride or Die. It's grossed just over £10 million, and it got 650 grand at the weekend. So they're doing well. This probably means that we're going to get another one at some point. I've not seen it, so I can't necessarily speak for where it is in terms of quality with the Bad Boys sort of oeuvre, but it's doing really well for itself, 4th week in the chart. Number 3, new entry. This is Kalki. Kalki 2898 AD, I believe it was. This is a Telugu language film. It's an Indian production. I wasn't too familiar with this. I wasn't aware of what it was. But pretty decent gross for its first week. So this is £886,000 that had gone on this film. So yeah, fairly decent. I'd imagine it's going to stick around probably the lower end of the top 10 when we come back to this next week. And the highest new entry of the week is A Quiet Place Day 1, which grossed just under £3 million in its first weekend. It came at number 2, but again, we're still talking about that juggernaut that's holding everything else off. Fairly decent opening for this, and again, we'll get to it. We're going to get to number 1. the behemoth that is Inside Out 2. Currently 3 weeks in the chart. It grossed just over 6 million, which I'm fairly certain, if you did the maths, means that it outgrossed everything combined of the rest of the top 10. It's doing massive numbers. Most people will know that it has grossed $1 billion worldwide as well in its third week of release. So far in the UK, it's just under 32 million. It is currently £8 million away from surpassing Dune Part 2's top spot for Best Film of 2024, or Highest Grossing Film of 2024. It's not yet touching the all-time highest list in terms of top 50, but I reckon it will probably get there, and I'm going to keep an eye on that as well in terms of where we end up. Looking at the top 10 then for 2024, being as this is the first one, I'm going to keep making sure that we go back to this every now and again. So at number 10, you've got The Fall Guy, 12.1 million. Like I say, if carries on where it's headed, if may knock The Fall Guy out. Back to Black, the Amy Winehouse documentary, at number 9 for 12.3 million. At number 8, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, 14.5. Number 7, Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire, 15.32. Number 6, The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, 15.5. 5, the Bob Marley biopic One Love, 17.1. Then quite a significant jump up to Migration at number 4, which is 21 mil. Number 3, Kung Fu Panda 4, 21.8. Number 2, currently Inside Out 2 at 31.9. And then Dune Part 2 sitting pretty at number 1, 39.4. I fully expect that Inside Out 2 is going to pip Dune 2 to the post. Whether it ends up being the highest grossing film of the year by the time we get to December is anyone's guess and another story. We'll have to see how things like Deadpool and Wolverine pan out. But it's doing really well for itself at the minute. Now, looking ahead to next week's releases, the things that are going to be bothering the box office next week, we have Maxine, the third in Ty West's X trilogy. Now, it's an 18-rated film. It's not opening hugely. It's opening quite decently. You'll find it in your sort of multiplex, but again, it's not going to have many screenings, so I can't imagine it's going to be worrying Inside Out 2 too much. I'd say its main competition there is whether or not there's going to be a drop-off from things like A Quiet Place for audiences looking to go out and get that horror film, but again, there's a difference in certifications there. The next one is Kill, which is I believe a Hindi language film. I'm not fully certain which language it is, but again, it's getting a smaller release, so I'd imagine it's probably going to come out somewhere around about 7 or 8 in the box office next week. But again, it's one that seems to be getting traction on social media. You have the LGBTQ plus related drama Unicorns, which had, I believe, its premiere at the BFI Flame Festival. It also had a screening at Manif early in the year as well, starring Ben Hardy and Jason Patel. Again, getting a lot of traction on social media for both of the stars of the film. So I'm intrigued to see where this one comes out next week for a relatively low budget film. You also have previews of Fly Me to the Moon. Now, typically what happens with previews is Fly Me to the Moon is shown over the weekend on Saturday and Sunday, but it doesn't actually come out in cinemas until next Friday. So at this point, it won't be in this chart for another 2 weeks yet. And what they tend to do with previews is they sort of take the money that happens in its gross from the Saturday and the Sunday, and they tend to hold on to it and then count it in the following week's accumulation of what is then its opening weekend, which is a little bit bizarre, and you could argue a little bit cheating. The best opening weekend that I ever was was aware of was Skyfall. Skyfall had an opening weekend of around about 6 days because it opened on a Monday, so that meant that they counted its Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday gross as its opening weekend. So if you know, we'll take that as what it is. So Fly Me to the Moon is actually out next week, but it's in previews this weekend. And the final one that I wanted to mention, because I couldn't not mention it, is the 25th anniversary of 1999's The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. I can imagine a lot of people flocking to go and see this, especially for the nostalgia. It's a great film, and I'm very, very intrigued to see where it may end up in this box office top 10 next week. So that's it. Something a little bit different. I hope I educated you a little bit on the sort of ins and outs of what's going on in the box office at the minute. I'm intrigued to look again next week and see where we're up to, see whether If has decided to plump the Fall Guy in the top 10 of the year. But I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Stay safe. Look after yourselves, or look after each other, I should say. And I'll see you next time.